Well, good afternoon or good morning to you, wherever you may be. Welcome to Target and Zyxel's introduction to who we are, Zyxel. My name is Nguyen. I am one of the product managers here at Zyxel, and we'll be covering, a lot of information. We do provide a lot of services and a lot of offerings that could be beneficial to you, but today we're going to focus primarily on our switch networks and our new IP surveillance switches. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A section. We'll get to those questions at the end, or depending on how it's going, I might answer them live while we're going through it as well. So do that. We have that time at the end as well. This will also be a recorded webinar, so in case you missed something or you have team members that want to join and see it later on, you can do that and be able to send them that information and be able to see what you saw. So I wanted to cover, how many of you, just by a raise of hands, how many of you heard of Zyxel before? So Zyxel is a company that is based in, our headquarters is based in Taiwan, but we are from the US office. I'm from the Anaheim, California, sunny California offices here. I know some of you may be kind of all around the country as well. So again, thank you for the time. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share with you and our partnership with Target Distribution and providing you networking solutions that can be beneficial to you. So let's jump in. We want to be your networking ally. So who is Zyxel? Just a quick kind of recap of who we are. We actually just celebrated our 30th year on doing networking products. So we've 30 years since 1989. We've been established. We power up over 700,000 businesses worldwide with our solutions, 1,500 employees worldwide in 150 markets, and we power up there's about 100 million devices that power up networks just overall. So really, we have a big footprint in the world industry. We have products that range from telco service provider products like DSLAMs. You might know about those DSLAMs, fiber connections. I'm primarily focused on the business side of things. So anything related to business switching, security firewall networkings, or wireless. I have kind of information, and that's where my main focus is, or with cloud. And then we also have products in the connected home as well. So we also pride ourselves in our R&D resources. We have over out of the 1,500, we have over 500 employees that are either support or R&D software, hardware technicians. So we really pride ourselves in that a third of our workforce is in that area to make sure that the product works well, that we've designed a great product, and also be able to get feedback from partners and from customers on how we can improve the product and add those functionalities and features into our product line moving forward. So we have kind of a global presence in that. And what Zyxel really offers, and it's kind of unique in a lot of cases, is that Zyxel is kind of an all-in-one networking solution provider. We provide security appliances for your UTM, for your threat management, for ransomware blocking, content filtering. We have our switches, which is what we're going to cover today. Unmanaged, managed, IP cam, surveillance switches, PoE, everything you need to power up your VoIP, your cameras, your access points. We have solutions there. We also have a solution of wireless access points as well. So anything connecting to a network via Wi-Fi. We have the AC technologies, AT Wave 2. AX is also on board, coming on there. Gateways such as hotspot gateways, hotels, or your guest network access. We have gateways that would do that and also be able to manage it, not only standalone, which you're maybe used to traditionally, but also into the cloud. Now, one thing I wanted to cover is, since maybe you're new to Zyxel, just the naming conventions that we use. So we're going to be talking about switches today. So I wanted to make sure we're on the same page when we're talking about switches. Primarily, I think in the market, it's kind of standardized on how it's named things. So ES stands for basically up to 100 megabits per second. GS is what most of our product lines are nowadays, is gigabit switches. So they all have gigabit ports. XS is the naming convention for the where it has all 10 gig ports. So the X is just a Roman numeral for 10. So that means that all of it is a 10 gig switch. So all the ports, including the copper, including the fiber, are all 10 gig capable. Now, XGS is a kind of a merge between them. It has 10 gig uplinks, but primarily it's still a gigabit switch. So all your traditional ports will be gigabit with a few 10 gig uplinks. And then MGS, you might not have to worry about it too much unless you're going into the telco side of product lines. Those are our Metro Ethernet switches. At the end, though, if you see a P or an HP, primarily it's mostly HP nowadays. It stands for PoE. So PoE plus, you'll see high power PoE is the HP And then if you see an F denoted at the end, those are fiber connectors. So kind of just giving you a general thing, information there. So what I wanted to focus today on, or at least to introduce you to, is something that is really big for us. We know there's a great market for it, and especially partnering with target distribution, going after customers that may be doing IP surveillance. So just by a raise of hands too, how many people here are doing right now IP surveillance? Just kind of give me an idea. Fantastic. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Brian. So today there are some challenges, right? We have to find most installers need to find a reliable source of power in order to power up IP cameras. They're also looking for, cost effective as well, but being cost effective on this kind of switch network could cause problems, because oftentimes if you use a really kind of just a cheap PoE switch or something that doesn't have a feature set, it makes the network potentially unstable, because there's maybe lack of features, or there's a lack of support, or even the design of the switch itself is not really good, right? Because maybe it's not their focus. A lot of the IP camera vendors provide a switch, but a lot of times those switches are just kind of either OEM'd off the shelf, just so they have something to power up their cameras, because they're not worried necessarily about the switch network itself. So there's little design or little ideas on how to do a switch network. So that could present a problem for you, especially in nowadays a more mixed network, where you're having not only have to deal with the cameras, but then you have to deal with the voice network, you have to deal with the data network, making sure those all play together nicely without having to just separate everything. So being able to find a cost-effective way. Also, there's some functionalities like subsets that you would need, or maybe that your traditional kind of off-the-shelf switch doesn't provide, to really go after the surveillance market. So, that's something that we've also taken in consideration. And also there's a lot of, with the cameras and with the switches, there's a lot of support, or there's a lot of mixed support for non-PoE standard devices, or requirements of certain switches that need to be functional with a standard camera, right? So everybody's moving towards also a 802.3 standard for PoE. So finding the right switch to be able to do that is really important. Otherwise, you're forced to use some sort of injector, which then can be very costly, kind of cumbersome to have a device, kind of a single device there plugged in just for the injection of power for those cameras. Some cases it works perfectly fine, but we think we have a better solution for that. So our new IP surveillance switches are made for this market. We have two series of switches that are there, both managed and unmanaged, with some unique hardware and software designs, so that it's really specialized in this particular market. It's different from, in a lot of ways, it's different from our standard switches, which we still have, but this one really goes after that market. It consists of 7 switches, 3 for unmanaged, 4 for managed, and it has a whole new design so that it's kind of definitely, differentiable from our standard switch line. And I'll talk about our standard switch line as well, and some of the benefits that are there as well, but wanted to introduce you to this 1300 series. Our GS1300 series is our unmanaged surveillance switch. It comes as an 8-port PoE with 2 uplink SFP or combo, so it can be both copper or fiber. The 18 HP is a 16-port with 2 uplinks, and the 26 HP is a 24-port with 2 additional uplinks. So the main difference of this compared to like your traditional 8-port switch that you kind of find off the shelf, especially for unmanaged. If you look into the market right now, there's a lot of unmanaged switches, but they are very low powered. Again, they're just made for people to just plug in some simple devices. But if you compare it, some of the power budgets that are on this, so on an 8-port, there's a 130 watt power supply, which traditionally on an unmanaged switch, you'll find like 60 watts, maybe 70 watts. We know that IP cameras, may use a lot more power than your traditional kind of PoE switches. That's kind of the 2 ends that we see. Most VoIP services or VoIP customers will see that, hey, the low end switches with low power is perfectly fine because the phones don't use that much power. There's not much draw. But on the IP camera, it's pushing the draw space, or at least the budget higher. So you have to find the right switch that fits that application. So this is an unmanaged switch. So there's not really a GUI, it's plug and play. So it's simple to use, simple to install, but you have the power, budgets available there. Now we do have some special things like some indicators and things like that, but one of the main features that this switch has is what we call extended range. Normal traditional Ethernet only supports up to 100 meters, of cabling where you can push data and power, right? So that's kind of the standard is 100 meters. Now you can flip on a feature on this product called extended range, which allows for you to do 10 megabits per second of throughput at 250 meters. So that really helps, now, currently what you have to do is typically install like an extender piece or maybe another PoE switch in between to go, your extra distance just because you have a camera or some sort of camera, pan-tilt zoom, somewhere that's just beyond the normal Ethernet. So we know of a lot of customers who have to buy like an injector type or a, another extender switch, like somewhere in between. So this allows for you to go that extra distance without having to, recable or get those extra components. So going up to 250 meters at 10 megabits per second. So that's kind of the drawback. You don't get your full gigabit, but for this kind of, instance or application, 10 megabits per second is more, it's better. It's good enough for even HD quality video and data being sent. So that's kind of the drawback, and that's kind of the give and take. But it allows for you to put a switch in there, be able to turn on several of the ports. So going back, you'll see. I can't point it out here real quick, but let me see if I can highlight that. You can see that there are some little blue switches here. Basically, they're just toggle switches that you turn on and off to enable the ports, individual ports, certain ports to have that extended range. Okay, so some of the ports only support 2 extended range ports on the low end, but on the higher end, the 26 ports can support up to 4. Now, because they're unmanaged, that's why you have to use those little toggle switch. Now, the cool thing is that we also have managed switches that allow for you to do that on any of the ports. So our managed switches is our GS1350. They are web managed, so you can log into a GUI, you can use command line interface, and then also in the future, we're going to add Nebula support. So just so you know now, in case that while you're setting it up, you see some of the menus that have some cloud management, it does not yet support cloud for our Nebula. So it will be in a future firmware upgrade, but it's already there in terms of the documentation. It's ready to go. So when we launch that, you can flip that switch on and be able to start managing it into the cloud. But so just so you know, it does not yet support it, but that is the future plan, is that it will be part of our Nebula cloud management solution. And we'll let you know when that happens, of course, and inform you of that. But our managed switches, again, can be managed via web. You get visibility of what's going on in the network and some additional really cool features that are really specific for the surveillance switch. So we have a 5-port version on the low end, the 6 HP. The one unique thing that it does have, so that I want to point out, is that this is the only switch that we currently have that supports 802.3 BT. So BT is the PoE++ or Ultra PoE, whatever you want to call it, but it's 60 watts of power. So if you're looking for a switch that has injection of 60 watts of power for your, IP camera, IP surveillance that has pan-tilt zoom, it has a heater in there that draws more than, the 30 watt standard, then this is the switch that you would use to give you both the higher power and also, additional ports to connect within that network. Now we have also then an 8-port with 4 uplinks. We have a 16-port with 2 uplinks, and then a 24-port with 2 additional uplinks. Again, the power is also a big deal. One thing that we do different, and I will kind of tell you, I'll let you know like later on, one of the key features, just keep this in mind, is that we do what we call consumption mode. So we do an intelligent PoE on actually what the device that's plugged into it, what the PD actually draws out. So we actually can save the budget, utilize or maximize your budget based on what devices are plugged into the network. And I have an example of that just later on in the slides here. But these are our our managed switches that have anywhere between 60 watts on the 4 or 5-port one, all the way up to 375 watts on the 24-port switch. So that is more than enough in on typical cases to power up pretty much all the ports, being able to support PoE. So, not having to worry about which ports support PoE. All of the ports will support PoE, just up to the budget that is available. So some of the advanced features that we've added for surveillance, things like IP camera, being able to detect neighboring devices. So being able to see even IP cameras, even third-party IP cameras on the network and see which ports they are. A camera keep alive check. So being able to keep those alive. And I'll go in details of those top three. And uninterrupted power to the camera as well. Now there's some additional features that I'm not going to be covering this, this session, but there's things like being able to remote reboot IP cameras. So you can reboot the ports. You can set up granular PoE parameters to kind of enable or make sure that non-PoE standard cameras can be turned on and off, because sometimes the way that it's negotiating the power is different. So we can actually customize that to make sure that your camera, whatever vendor it may be, if it's not using the standard PoE, can still be powered up. Scheduling PoE, being able to turn on and off cameras, being able to do reboots, whatever it may be that be implied, and also allow for PoE priority. So if, let's say a technician is plugging in some ports and he decides to add in another camera, but it uses up, there's not enough power there, then whatever cameras that have higher priority will be given the power rather than that new camera. So that's kind of a way to, maybe from a security standpoint, people, let's say you're maxed out on power, if people plug in devices to try to take away the power to try to take down some cameras, that won't happen because of the priority. So one of the main features that we've added to this surveillance switch is what we call continuous PoE. This guarantees that there is uninterrupted power delivered to the camera at all times, even when there are these situations. Usually when you do a reload of configuration files, you return it to factory default, you do a firmware upgrade, or if there's some sort of weird maybe error that causes the switch to reboot, if that's ever to happen, the cameras will not have to reboot. So the whole switch does not power down, power back up. So it allows for the cameras to stay online or at least booted up, so it doesn't have to reboot themselves while the switch is doing its own internal reboot. So again, those situations of when you reload the configuration file, you return it to factory defaults, you do some sort of firmware upgrades, those cameras will still be alive. So the downtime in terms of traffic is only based on the switch coming back online. Once the switch is back online, it's going to pass that video traffic again immediately. So again, it's just to save the time of those. And so we've worked with a lot of partners who have given us some of these feedbacks to implement it. And of course, if there are feature sets that you see of benefit that we could add to this that would make your surveillance solution deployment easier, features that make it easier to troubleshoot, anything like that, please let us know, and we will definitely take that and move it into our R&D section to evaluate. The camera status is really important too. It displays the summary of the devices that are connected to it, including the health of it, the PoE, power draw, the IP address, the system name, etc. So in this particular case, there's an access camera on that port. You can click through the PoE as well to the device. So on this view, you can click in to that IP address and it will take you to that camera's GUI interface if there is one. And usually there is, or some sort of management level. You can use it to power cycle, you can reboot it, you can reset it, those kinds of things. But it tells you a general overall health of the device as well. So it gives you that camera status, usually that you don't typically get on the view. Now, one feature we've added is what we call auto camera recovery. This is a great feature that really helps you as, it may help you as not having to even do a truck roll or a call, or nobody would even notice that the camera had gone down per se. A lot of times what we find is a lot of the CCTV, there's some sort of dashboard monitoring and you'll see all the different views, right? All from each camera. And a lot of times you'll find like there'll be a black spot here and there, right? Because the cameras are either off, not transmitting, we don't know what it is. And you have to send somebody pretty much to go out there and check to see, is it the cameras down? Is it the network broken? Whatever it may be. But what we've added to kind of help with that is a feature called auto camera recovery. It allows for us to detect the camera and see if it's alive, either by ping, LLDP, we can detect that, and then take some action. So we can, for example, put down the different IP addresses of those cameras. We can set the polling time, so we can check, let's say, every 10 seconds, and we will poll it 2 times. So if it fails on the poll twice, then it takes some action. You can choose to do a reboot with an alarm or just set an alarm, right? So it can send it to your syslogs, and later on, once it's in the cloud, then you'll see that and get notifications in the cloud. But if you're using like a syslog server now, or any kind of syslog, it will send those alerts to your syslog, which then will give you the visibility and report of what's going on as well. But then you can always log into the device, be able to set that. Now we've also enhanced some of the features. Again, like I mentioned, we work with some of our partners to kind of tweak these features and give them flexibility to use, because some of the cameras, for example, require themselves to reboot. So let's say we did a reboot and an alarm. So we reboot the camera. There is a certain period of time that allows for the camera to kind of get back online, right? So we have to wait before we start polling it again. Otherwise, we start polling it again, it's going to fail again, and then we're going to try to reboot it again, right? So it's going to go into a vicious cycle in that regard. So we set, you set your thresholds, and then we will follow that. In addition to that, just like any other kind of device, when you unplug it and you power it down, you want to wait, let's say 10 seconds for all the power to discharge before you power it back on, right? So we have also included a configuration that allows for you to set that as well. So here we'll shut down the power on the PoE for that device. We'll wait 10 seconds in this example, and then offer power again. And then in 10 minutes, we'll start polling it again. So however you want to tweak that, however you want to configure that for your camera, for your situation, that is up to you. And so then we'll go back into the recovery. We'll start checking it again, making sure that it's alive. So it's real helpful because a lot of times all it takes is just that reboot, right? So after it's polled twice, you can have it continuously try every 10 minutes if you want, or you can just say, you know what, it's dead. Somebody needs to go out there and now physically check it. But a lot of times it just needs to be rebooted. And this is really helpful. It's real helpful because sometimes when you do go on site, you're gonna have to find out, well, which camera is it? Which port does that camera belong to on that switch to power cycle it? And you don't want to power cycle the entire switch because then all of your cameras would go down, right? So finding which one it is could be difficult as well. But this gives you that visibility right from the dashboard or right from this menu system, allows for you to see exactly which one is not pulled for you to be able to reboot it. We also have enhanced the hardware as well for surge protection and electrostatic discharge. So up to 4 times higher surge protection, up to 2 times better discharge function on our hardware. So that requires not only it requires a hardware change out based on our that's different from our standard kind of commercial switches. So this is kind of the kind of an overall view just of the kind of a spec sheet of it. We can provide that. These are all in our data sheets as well. So if you reach out to the target reps that you may be in contact to, or if you want to contact us or go to our website, this information is available. So again, keep in mind the unmanaged side doesn't have very many like software features except for extended range. And it has some LEDs that tell you like what's your power consumption. So that's pretty, cool that it gives you that kind of visibility to see where your power consumption is on an unmanaged switch. So you'll see like an LED display kind of to tell you how much power you are drawing on that device. Now on the managed side that's where a lot of your benefits come from with the management, being able to manage the PoE, having access via CLI command line if you need, and again, support for Nebula in the future. And also features like extended range on all ports. And also the managed range has the surge protection and the discharge protection. So if you're looking for just a plug and play as cost effective as possible, no management, you go with the unmanaged. But as a managed service provider, if that's what you're looking at coming into, you want the visibility of a network, then you go with the fully kind of managed solution. So this is just the port configurations. All of the switches, so this are all of our unmanaged products and how they compare. A lot of our unmanaged switches are external power supplies, but again, for IP surveillance, we know that if you're deploying this into a cabinet or into a small housing kind of thing, all the power is internal on the unmanaged. But then on the higher end models, the managed switches, the small device, the 4-port is the only one that is external, whereas all the other ports, the higher end ports are also internal power supplies. It's just because the 5-port switch is really small, you can't put an internal power supply in it. So there is a little power brick that goes along with it, but it should be okay in those scenarios. So this is, again, just a lineup of what our 8-port kind of PoE switches look like compared to the 1350s. And then the 24-port, again, a wide range of options there. for 24 port switches. And then Zyxel also has fully managed switches as well. So just keep that in mind. We have 10 gig fiber if you're doing those kinds of bigger projects and things like that. So I wanted to cover kind of really the most important concept, especially with these 1350s, is with PoE, right? Everybody's looking at how do I power up these IP cameras, or how do I just power up any kind of devices? Well, Zyxel has a full range of PoE switches, both managed and unmanaged and web managed. So we have a line of lower end unmanaged and just basic managed, all the way to a much more, like a lot higher power budget, smart managed and fully managed switches portfolio. So anywhere that ranges from 70 watts all the way up to 1,000 watts, we have a PoE switch that can fit for that. And again, my example about what Zyxel does is if you can plug anything or have anything that's related to a network, Zyxel has some sort of solution that connects that. Now, one of the things that does differentiate us is what we call smart power, or smart PoE. You can call it intelligent PoE. We just do things, intelligently, I guess, for PoE. In typical cases, the power budget usually is the kind of the issue, right? Everybody's trying to figure out how much power do I need to power up as many access points, IP cameras, and voice or IP devices as I need. We do intelligent PoE, meaning that it will detect the actual draw that's coming from those devices and then put that against the budget, rather than classifying it for 15 watts or 30 watts and using that as the budget. And we can control PoE on each of the ports, being able to turn them on and off, being able to schedule them as well. So here's an example. I'm using an access point just because it's typically higher powered than maybe your voice over IP or things like that. But traditionally, let's say an access point, in this particular case, our access point is classified as a class 4 802.3 AT. So that's a 30 watt standard. So in a non-intelligent PoE switch, it would require, in order to power up 20 devices, you have to have an allocation of 600 watts of power. So that's not only, kind of wasteful, but it's also more costly because you have to buy a switch that has a much bigger power capacity. And it also consumes a lot more power as well, just to maintain that 60 watt or 600 watt power, even if you don't consume it. The access point itself actually only consumes 16 watts. So on its normal kind of draw. And so 20 access points at 16 watts is only 320 watts of budget. So in a switch that has 375 watts, which is what Zyxel has on the 24 port per se, you can power up to 20 devices on that budget. Again, because we're using that consumption mode. And just to let you know, consumption mode is enabled by default now on Zyxel switches. So we know that's a benefit to the customer, benefit to all that. So we have that available. Let me stop my video here just in case you can't see the 375 watts there. So that's the 375 watt switch, only needing to use 320 watts for this consumption mode. So we do that. I usually say my tagline is we have more power to power more devices. So that's kind of the benefit. We do it smartly. We do it in a way that allows for you to get maximized of your budget that's available. So we are running also a promotion through Target Distribution as well. We're doing what we call buy a switch and you get an access point for free. So we have some specific SKUs that you can reach out to your Target rep that will provide for this. But basically, we have a good, better, best. So depending on which switch you're looking to buy in the series, that's where we will. That's where we have product for. So we have access points that come bundled with the switches. So these are all PoE switches, both on they're all web managed switches on the low end, all the way up to the cloud management, all the way up to the best series there, which is the high end with 10 gig uplinks. So those are kind of a quick rundown on Zyxel switches, and some of the solutions that we provide. One thing we just wanted to let you know, we also have a very aggressive partner program that we work with. And so if you'd like to become a partner, please reach out to us. There's a lot of benefits in there, both margin and also and margin and support there. So if you have any questions right now, please let me know. Use the Q&A session, and we will get to any of the questions that you may have. If not, you can always, again, reach out to the or to your sales rep, or you can actually email me as well, try@zyxel.com, and we can get to that. If not, if you are looking to drop off, thank you again for your time, and we hope to work with you as a networking solution provider for you. We also will have to do some training as well with Target on in regards to security and wireless and things like that. So if you're looking for more information on that, please let us know. All right, if not, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to speaking to you soon, and hope to be your networking ally. Thank you for your time.